It's an interesting time for business. Tariff and trade policies are dynamic, supply chains are squeezed, and cash flow, it's tighter than ever. If your business can't adapt in real time, you are in a little bit of hurt. So how do you get full visibility and adapt in real time? Over 42,000 businesses trust NetSuite by Oracle, your AI-powered business management suite. It brings accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR all under one roof. NetSuite is the #1 cloud ERP for a reason. It's your single source of truth, giving you the data and control you need to move quickly. Real-time forecasting helps you move into the future with confidence, and with AI built in, you can automate the busy work and focus on strategy. NetSuite helps you see what's stuck, what it's costing you, and how to pivot fast. If I were running a business with a lot of moving parts, I'd use NetSuite for full control over everything. Tame the chaos with NetSuite. If your revenues are at least in the 7 figures, download the free ebook, Navigating Global Trade, 3 Insights for Leaders at netsuite.com/SPI. That's netsuite.com/SPI. Hey, I get it. You've worked really hard to build up your business, and it's doing great. So great that you need help now. The most important thing for your business is to hire the right people to support it. So how can you find amazing candidates quickly? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you stand out and hire fast. And with Sponsored Jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, Sponsored Jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. And it's one of the largest databases of job seekers, too, giving business owners access to a wide range of candidates. And one of the things I love most about Indeed is the job alerts feature. I get notified when new candidates apply. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/smartpassive. Just go to Indeed.com/smartpassive right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/smartpassive. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. The perfect product launch. It's the goal for every brand marketer. High heat, fast sellout, and fans posting recipes like trophies. What do Sydney Sweeney's soap drop, Taylor Swift's tickets, and your next launch have in common? Well, they're not bought, they're bragged about. Fanfare turns your drop into a moment. Fanfare cues real fans, blocks bots, and builds launch experiences worth screenshotting. Want hype without the heartbreak? Get Fanfare's 5-step hype drop playbook with our proven success formula and make your next launch unforgettable at fanfare.io/playbook. Again, fanfare.io/playbook. This is a Smart Passive Income Podcast with Pat Flynn, session number 110. Whoop, whoop.
Welcome to the Smart Passive Income Podcast, where it's all about working hard now so you can sit back and reap the benefits later. And now your host. His definition of success is playing with his kids, Pat Flynn.
Still using a copy-paste website? Break the template trap with Framer. Whether you're overwhelmed by traditional site builders or frustrated with cookie-cutter designs, Framer gives you the freedom to create a site that's professional, polished, and uniquely yours. Framer is the design-first, no-code website builder that lets anyone ship a production-ready site in minutes. It's free to start, allowing you to browse hundreds of pixel-perfect templates or even design something on your own on a totally blank canvas. Add bold animations like appear effects, text effects, parallax scrolling, scroll animations, looping animations, and much more in seconds. The built-in AI handles the heavy lifting, generating starter layouts, and can even translate your entire site to any language. Ready to build a site that looks hand-coded without hiring a developer? Launch your site for free at framer.com and use code SPI to get your first month of pro on the house. That's framer.com, promo code SPI. Framer.com, promo code SPI. Rules and restrictions may apply. Running a business means legal questions are inevitable. Is this contract or agreement solid? What can I do if a client won't pay me? Am I set up properly for taxes? Well, rather than trying to navigate all of this on your own or searching endlessly online, imagine having a law firm on your side without the high hourly rates. That's exactly what Legal Shield's small business plans offer. With Legal Shield, entrepreneurs get access to real legal support, contract reviews, collection letters, guidance on business formation, and even help handling IRS audits. Members can book consultations, upload documents through the app, and work with a provider law firm that understands small business laws in your state. You also get proactive help on tax and trademark questions so you can stay ahead of legal risks. And if a client delays payment, Legal Shield can send professional collection letters to help you recover what you're owed, all for a fraction of what traditional attorneys charge. Go to LegalShield.com/SPI or call 833-570-9980 to learn more and get big business legal support without a big business budget. That's LegalShield.com/SPI. Hey everybody, what's up and welcome to episode 110 of the Smart Passive Income Podcast. So thankful you're here. I'm going to get right into today's interview with a special guest, Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek. He's been on the podcast before in session number 51. If you go to smartpassiveincome.com/session 51, you can check that out. But lots of great new information in this particular episode, including stuff about his new podcast, why he created it, stuff he's struggling with, and the sort of 20% he's doing to get 80% of his results. In addition, we're going to talk about efficiency and how to be efficient today. We also talk about a lot of experiments he's running on his blog and on other people's websites right now. And lastly, I asked him a question that I should have asked him the last time he was on, which was, Tim, what would you do right now if you wanted to start a business from scratch? And great insight coming from Tim here. So I think you'll enjoy this. Thank you so much. And let's get to the interview. What's up, everybody? I'm so happy to welcome back Mr. Tim Ferriss to the Smart Passive Income Podcast. What's up, Tim? How are you?
I'm great. I'm enjoying Hawaiian weather in San Francisco while it lasts.
It's been a whole year and a half since you've last come on the show. That was in episode 51 for everybody out there. And a lot has happened since then. You wrapped up the whole 4-hour book series, and now you're doing a podcast. And I'd love to talk and start with that, actually. First of all, congratulations on it. I saw that it ranked number 1 in overall iTunes when it came out, and number 1 in business right now. First, tell us about the podcast. Why did you start one?
The podcast for me was really an outgrowth of pursuing an idea that wouldn't go away. And I find that most of my, whether they're good ideas or not, impactful ideas tend to be the ideas that keep me up for maybe 2 nights a week or 2 nights every other week with insomnia, and they just don't go away, whatever that might be. So a screenplay is one that's been bugging me for years now, so it's probably going to end up happening at some point. The podcast was another, because I noticed when I was doing the launches for my various books and whatnot, that the interviews I enjoyed the least were the soundbite constrained 2 or 3 or 4 minute television segments. Mm-hmm. There was really no room to improvise. You couldn't get a word in edgewise. It was very artificial, and it felt like a large waste of time because a lot of prep went into it, a lot of pre-production, a lot of waiting around in the green room before, and then all sorts of stuff afterwards, wiping off makeup, whatnot. And the antithesis of that was my podcasting experience, where I had such a great time on your podcast, on Joe Rogan's podcast, Mark Maron's podcast, Nerdist, etc. And I enjoyed every single one of those interviews. And so I started to naturally ask myself 2 things. Number 1, would I enjoy being the interviewer as much as being the interviewee? I don't know. But it seemed like the format of the podcast was so conversational that that could be the case. And then secondly, I realized I have these conversations in Silicon Valley or in New York or Japan or Argentina, wherever I might be, in the course of doing book research and in other contexts that are just fascinating. I mean, they're just these conversations on many, many, many occasions that I haven't captured for the book, let's say, because I didn't see the value. In retrospect, that was stupid. Secondly, where I just wish other people could be a fly on the wall because the person I'm talking to is so interesting. And I'm sure you've had those conversations too, where you're just like, oh my God, like what? Like you're creating turbines in space to replace like wind power on the earth? Like what? People have to hear about this. This is insane. And the objective of my podcast, the Tim Ferriss Show, then became to allow people to be a fly on the wall for those conversations, but also to dissect how they became and how they are the best at what they do. So it's applying the 80-20 principle to their skill set, whether they're a chess prodigy like Josh Waitzkin, who was the basis for Searching for Bobby Fischer, who was my second interview, or say Jason Silva, who's a filmmaker, or a hedge fund manager, or whatever it might be.
Awesome. Yeah, I've had those conversations. I haven't had any conversations with anybody, building wind turbines in space. That sounds pretty cool. But I have had those conversations without a recorder, and I'm just like, man, I wish I could just save this and share it. And I think that's what's cool about a podcast is there are kind of really no rules to what you have to or what you can't publish. And I think a lot of opportunities are missed from people who are either too scared to start a podcast or don't know technically how to do it. There's a lot of great conversations out there that a lot of people would benefit from that aren't getting it because the world of podcasting is still very, very new. Now, what were some of the challenges you've faced? And I know that Tim Ferriss is as non-human as we like to think you are. Sometimes we also know that you are human. Have you experienced any challenges with getting your podcast up and going?
Oh, for sure. From start to finish. And I'd say that just to take a step back to add one more comment to the last question that you asked, and that is one thing I love about the podcast and is the absolute creative control of what you put out. And many people come to me to ask about self-publishing versus traditional publishing versus hybrid models. And anything besides self-publishing, whether that's podcasts or books or television or feature film or anything creative, forces you to make creative compromises. That is just part of the agreement. And I've realized, maybe it's my sort of advancing age and I'm becoming a cantankerous old man, I don't know, but I really like having final say on pretty much every aspect of what I put out. And it's very hard to arrange that unless you control it start to finish. And the podcast is just so pure in that way for me. I really, really love that return to basics.
Right.
To answer your question about the challenges, I've wanted to do a podcast since at least 2 years ago. And the reason I didn't do it is there was a deluge of information. I think that most teaching, most books, most anything fails from, if you had to choose one, too much information, not too little information. So I went out there and it's like, how to start a podcast. And I was like, there is so much conflicting advice. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, for instance, I didn't even know how to create a feed. I know this is embarrassing, but it's like, how do you even create a feed? Is that the first thing that you do? And then where do you put the podcast? Where do you host it? Do you host it with just someone like a Rackspace or a Media Temple, or is there somebody else that you need to look at? And what about equipment? Does it need to be really complicated? What about post-production? Do I do that myself? Do I use Audacity? Do I use GarageBand? Do I use whatever it might be? And there were so many options. I fell into a paradox of choice situation where I just did nothing. And I think that that's true for many, many things. I mean, for instance, one of the startups that I worked with a while back, it was called Jiminy originally, rebranded as Daily Burn, and then sold to IAC, which is run in part by Barry Diller. So it was a great outcome. We were able to increase their conversion rate on their landing page. No new design, no new real coding to speak of, just removing clickable buttons. We just removed clickable elements and then centered the most important click in terms of the button and made it a little more pronounced with a complementary color. And the conversion went up, I think, 25%. So
wow.
When in doubt, reduce the number of options that you offer people or the number of options that you consider. So for me, I really had to rely on talking to friends of mine, whether that's Lewis Howes or pinging you about certain aspects of it, or friends who are somewhere in the top, say, whatever, several hundred podcasts, to ask them, like, what do you do? Like, help me simplify this. Yeah. And that was the only way I was able to get started. But it's astonishing to me how seemingly complex podcasting is, given how long it has been in existence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's been around for years, and just now people are starting to, it's starting to catch on mainstream, and even then, it's still not push button easy.
No, it's not, and it might be at some point, but it's an art craft, and I think that you need to, like anything else, practice it. And for me, part of another thing that triggered my interest in the podcast, not to sort of belabor this, but I worked on this TV show for the last year and a half with Turner Broadcasting. And so this comes back to the conversation about compromises and making deals with larger entities. The launch has been postponed many, many times. And this has been extremely frustrating because the end product is really outstanding. I mean, I very specifically picked the production company that did all of Anthony Bourdain's stuff. It's a good show. But what I got to do in the process of making that show was voiceovers. And voiceovers can be brutally boring and painful and time consuming. But I learned how to read without sounding like you're reading. And that is a real skill you need to practice. But it reinvigorated my interest in the spoken word. And I also simultaneously, not a lot of people know this perhaps, but I have a book club that I launched experimentally. It's just the Tim Ferriss Book Club, where every month or so I push a book into the limelight that I feel has changed my life in some way that did not receive the attention or might not receive the attention it deserves, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And as part of that, I have acquired, in some cases, audiobook rights. So I'm actually producing the audiobooks myself. And as part of that, have learned a lot about audio. So it's just such a pure, old-fashioned, for lack of a better term, oral tradition. It's so primal, yet so technical, and the combination and the juxtaposition of those two things I find really, really fascinating. And I'm really insecure about my own voice, so this is kind of like therapy for me.
Well, I found that for myself since starting a podcast. I've become more confident as a speaker and a communicator, not just in business, but on stage, but even in my personal life with friends and family. I'm much better able to communicate what is in my head with everybody else around me. And I think you're going to see you're a great communicator now. It's going to be even better down the road after you have a number of podcasts in your belt.
I hope so. And let me just add one more thing to that, which is I'm doing a podcast partially not to become good at podcasts. And when I look at acquiring a skill, one of the first questions I ask myself is, what might this transfer to? Because if you learn, for instance, how to write a short story, learning to write a good short story is not only good for becoming good at writing short stories, because for most people, there's no real utility there professionally, right? Mm-hmm. But if you become really good at writing short stories and you have a constraint like 5 pages or 3 pages, you become very good at putting your thoughts on paper and removing extraneous fluff and redundancy and anything that is unclear. And that transfers tremendously to everything from negotiating to dispute resolution with your spouse to fill in the blank, selling, sales copy. It transfers tremendously. So for me, podcasting is really just a wedge in the door to improve a whole spectrum of other skills that transfer to other areas.
Yeah. No, I love that. I totally can see that. And you're always big on the 80-20 stuff, and I want to ask for all the podcasters out there who are listening, Tim, what are the 20% of things you're doing to potentially get 80% of the results with your podcast?
Oh, yeah, great question. So the first is find someone to do the post-production for you, and there are many.
Tim, I lost you. Hey, Tim.
Hey, we back?
Hey, yeah. You had just mentioned, you said, great question. First thing I would do is get somebody to do post-production for me.
And then I cut out.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's so ironic. It's just very appropriate.
I'm going to keep this in, by the way.
Case in point, right. So, all right, so we're good? We're rolling?
Yeah.
No, this is great. Okay, cool. So find someone to do post-production. And this was the big kind of elephant in the room for me that I sometimes didn't acknowledge, but it was always the predominant reason that I didn't pull the trigger and get started on the podcast. I was like, I don't want to have to learn another Adobe product or something that's just this monster of a program with a million different options. I don't want to take the time to do that. And you can find someone very easily to say, help you put together an intro, an outro, if you even want it, and then slap that together with some fading with an interview in the middle. I do very little editing to the interview itself. I let it run. If there are curses in it, that's fine. Very Joe Rogan-esque in that respect. And recognizing something along the lines of what Reid Hoffman said, who's chairman of LinkedIn and considered the oracle of Silicon Valley. He's a brilliant entrepreneur and investor. He said, if you're, in effect, I'm paraphrasing here, but if you're not embarrassed by the first version of the product that you ship, you're too late. And
I love that.
So I took that approach with the podcast. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I've been postponing this for so long. Let me make an experiment of it, present it that way to my audience, and just put it out there. And you can see, I think, a progression. I have 5 episodes or so out, 6, and you can see the experimentation, and you can see the progression in a way, the evolution of a podcast, which I think is kind of fun. And in terms of, so number one, find somebody who can produce it, which is not that hard. You can go on Elance, which I guess is now Odesk, and you can find someone really easily. Get some basic equipment. So you could probably comment on this better than I could. I grabbed one of the mics that you recommended for this type of Skype interview, which is fantastic.
Are you using it right now?
I'm using the Audio Technica.
Nice.
Yeah, the ATR 2100 is fantastic. It's really, for the price point, which is what, $50 or something, it's really fantastic. I mean, it's better than the Yeti. It's better than all these other things that I tried. And I also have a Zoom H4n if I am doing an in-person, say, two-person conversation. Mm-hmm. And I have two just very basic stage mics with XLR cables for that. Where it gets a little dicey is if you have 3 or 4 people. And I actually recently had someone bring their equipment in, because I've been split testing basically all my equipment. So there's an H6 Zoom which allows up to, I think, 6 inputs, and she brought along lav mics, which were really awesome and impressive. But for the most part, it's much easier logistically to organize Skype interviews. In the beginning, I was doing all in person, and I think there is some extra energy that you encounter in the in-person. But again, if you can't optimize something that you don't ship. That's an expression here in San Francisco, meaning if you take forever to ship something, you can't tweak it. Like if you don't ship it, you can't improve upon it. So get a crappy version out first. That's your minimally viable product. That was episode 1.
Right.
And then if you're not going to record podcasts in the first place because it's too much of a hassle to get 2 people in the same place and find a quiet location and set up all the equipment, just do it via Skype. I use Call Recorder. Typically, there are other options, of course, but Call Recorder plus the ATR 2100. So far, for me, with a headset, I've realized that you get a lot of echo if you don't use a headset sometimes or have the other person use it, is really all you need to have something that your friends and close supporters will put up with, right? And that's all you really want. You want them to kind of put up with the first 2 or 3 episodes and give you feedback.
Right.
And then the responsibility is on you to improve upon it. For me, again, maybe this is too much info, but I ended up using Libsyn after a lot of consideration for hosting. There are, of course, other options. Who do you use currently?
I use both Libsyn and also SoundCloud. I'm actually doing sort of some experimental stuff on SoundCloud right now.
I've been curious. So I've also experimented a little bit with SoundCloud. Have you found there to be a lot of organic downloads or listens aside from when you promote it? Because that has been a challenge for me. I like SoundCloud. I really enjoy the technology, but the vast majority, 80+% of my listens are coming from iTunes listeners, whether that's native or I'm forcing them to use iTunes.
With SoundCloud, I'm going to have a whole episode with sort of the results of using SoundCloud. The reason I like using SoundCloud is, especially for the other show that I have, which is Ask Pat, which is a shorter format episode. Right. It's great because when you share those links on social media, people can actually play them from their Twitter stream or on their Facebook stream. So for a 5 to 10 minute show, that makes complete sense. For an hour to 2 hour show, like kind of ours, it maybe people wouldn't stay on Twitter for 2 hours.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, these are the kind of things that I'm figuring out. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No. I'll save the rest for that episode. That's coming up. But again, thank you for mentioning and supporting the ATR 2100. I mentioned that in my podcasting tutorial. Tim called me up the other day and he was like, "Hey, I need a better mic," and I gave him that one. It's like we said, $50 as opposed to the high LPR 40. They sound virtually the same to the untrained ear, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. So
the quality. Oh no! I was just going to say I appreciate the feedback. It's been very helpful.
Cool. Yeah. So the podcastingtutorial.com. That's my free tutorial. No emails required. It'll go through all the different mic options, how to edit, and do all that stuff. So moving on, Tim. You like to run experiments on yourself. You're like a human guinea pig, and I've read a lot about what you've done, and I've learned a lot from it too, especially from in 4 Hour Body. But I'm curious, in terms of marketing and business, are you also running experiments, and what have some of those experiments been? Are you running any right now to just try things, see what happens, and what have the results been from any of those, if any?
Yeah, constantly. That's in a way my second set of guinea pig experiments, and what's been really fascinating since 2007 or so when I started becoming very involved with startups. And many people don't realize that that's basically my primary financial career outside of publishing, which is very secondary in terms of revenue, is advising and investing in tech startups. So I was pre-seed money, Uber, Evernote, Shopify, and the list goes on and on and on. There are between 30 and 35 companies, and most of them are consumer-facing companies. So what does that mean? Not accidentally, that allows me to not only see the experiments that I do on my blog or in business, and I can explain what some of those are. It allows me to get the inside playbook for what all of these other companies are doing. So if I'm curious about direct response radio, I have a company that I can go to that's probably spending $1 million a month doing that. If I want to learn about retargeting and anything YouTube specific, I have a company that I can go to that's making just an art form out of that. And that has been really, really fun.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And on a macro level, for instance, I helped to design the Shopify Build a Business competition way back in the day. I think it was 2008, 2009 probably. And they now have 100,000 stores on the platform. So they can aggregate patterns and not only show me what works and what doesn't, but show people who are competing in the competition what works and what doesn't. So a great way for people to see different experiments and inflection points and what didn't work, what worked, is to go to my blog, which is just 4hourblog.com, F-O-U-R, spell it all out, 4hourblog.com, and click on Muse Examples in the topics. And in Muse Examples, each post typically profiles 4 to 5 different companies, what worked, what didn't, how they got their first PR wins and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Personally, right now, you'll find this maybe hilarious, is I am experimenting properly with email capture for the first time. So I've never built my list, so to speak, and this was a deliberate choice, not a incompetent accident.
That I was incompetent when I started, so I'm curious to hear the intentionality behind this.
Oh no, I've got plenty of incompetence. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there are plenty of things where I look back and I'm like, what an idiot! Are you kidding me? Like, there are things that have been broken on my site for a year or two before I noticed. And I'm like, oh my god, I cannot believe that has been broken for so long. Like, I've been driving a car with 2 flat tires for a year. Jesus. But the email, deliberately, I did not want people to feel they were being marked as sales prospects from their first encounter with my material. I wanted people to develop a very high degree of trust with me, and in so doing, realize that my recommendations were first and foremost based on my thousands of experiments and selection of the best possible tools, products, services available on the planet, right? And that was the purpose that has been the purpose with my books. For instance, in the case of the 4 Hour Body, I could have created a sports nutrition or a nutraceutical line, and keep in mind, I've built and sold these types of businesses in the past, so I know the numbers. I could have built a $10 to $20 million a year business easily had I launched a line of products with the launch of the 4 Hour Body. I did not do that. Why on earth would I make that choice? I made that choice because I wanted to be bulletproof against criticism that I was biased in my recommendations because I was making money from those recommendations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to build, and this is not, by the way, a black and white, I did the right thing type of scenario. There are many ways that someone could argue it wasn't an either or thing. I could have done both. I could have pulled it off, but I felt like it was too risky. So I didn't really capture email addresses properly for the last however many years since the blog launched, 2007. And I've been experimenting. If you go to 4hourworkweek/blog or 4hourblog.com, you'll see a lot of split testing going on right now. So I have a team of folks, actually, and we're going to do a bunch of different post-mortem, like post-game analysis posts about this to show people how it works and what worked and what didn't.
Cool.
But I'm doing all sorts of split testing on location of email capture, color of email capture, call to action on the buttons, the promise in the copy, downloadable PDFs versus blah, 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 blah. It's going to go on and on. So there are about 6 to 8 weeks of split testing that I'm doing right now. So if you go to the blog, and here's a trick. If you want to see if someone's split testing, you have their URL. So you visit their page. Now, you've probably been cookied at that point if they're doing split testing because they don't want to display multiple versions to the same person. If you put after the URL, and I believe this works in most browsers, $ equals, and then no cache, all lowercase one word, that will clear the cache. And you can see what other variants might look like. It's kind of a fun little trick.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm also running experiments with the book club, for instance. So in the case of the book club, I'm acquiring often audiobook rights. I will be acquiring digital rights. And I've experimented with timing of launches. I've experimented with pricing of the books themselves. I've experimented also with how to look at, say, exclusivity on ACX, which is owned by Amazon and helps you to self-publish to iTunes and Amazon and so on, Audible, versus non-exclusivity plus something like Gumroad, which allows you to do direct selling to your audience with roughly a 5% commission, right? So you're doubling, at the very least, you're doubling your royalties, but is the volume there, is the discovery there, this is actually a big deal, to make it worth it. And so I'm running those types of experiments. And then there are other things that you can see on the blog over time. For instance, I tend to, and you probably know more about this than I do, but I tend to like to go very low priced or very high priced. I don't like to play in the middle very much. And that's because I either want something that is an impulse purchase that is not likely to generate a lot of customer service headache, and that can be completely automated. In other words, it doesn't have a sales cycle. There's no real persuasion involved. It's a binary yes or no decision. Or
that's low price stuff.
Right. Or something like opening the Kimono event, which I did several years ago, which was very limited capacity. I think it was ultimately ended up being about 120 or 130 people. And it could have been much larger, but we turned away a lot of people. And that was a minimum of $7,500 per person, maximum $10,000 per person. And the pricing was dependent on how quickly you signed up. And that sold out with a single blog post of roughly, 500, 750 words. That's the only promotion that I did for the entire event. Wow. And you start running the numbers and it turns into real money. Now, do I want to run events consistently? Probably not. It was fun once, but I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time I do it. And I feel like the tools I presented in that sort of inner circle, tight knit meeting were sort of persistent. They're perennial or timeless, and I don't want to have to reinvent it next time around. But anyway, these are some of the tests that I run. I'm constantly running tests.
And you will be revealing the results of those tests on the blog at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I'll also talk about some of the other stuff related to the launch of the podcast, right? And there are some non-obvious kind of tricks, which are completely ethical. I mean, very above board. Nothing bad. But I think that a lot of the secret sauce is in sequencing, the progression. I mean, this is true for learning. It's also true for launches and execution. So, in the podcast world, like if you're promoting a podcast, you might have 6 different things you're planning on doing. I think that very often what those are is important, but in what order you do them is just as important. So I'll be talking about that because, like you said, the Tim Ferriss Show, the podcast, has been pretty much in the top 10 since it launched across all of iTunes, and it's number 8 right now. And I'm trying to experiment to the extent that I can use the stats to help me. And of course, a lot of what happens on iTunes is in a black box, so it makes it a little more difficult. But there is a fair amount of data that you can pull from stats that you would get on Libsyn and SoundCloud and things like that. So yeah, I'll be doing a post on that as well, because the fact of the matter is, even if you give this is where people underestimate themselves and overestimate the rest of the world. And I've talked about this before, but even if I gave step-by-step instructions on how to beat my podcast, here is how you produce a superior podcast that will rank higher on iTunes. There's a very high probability that no one would do it. And I've noticed this. If you go to my blog,
no one would take the action to do it, or no one
would take the action. No one would actually go through all of the steps and details to get it done. I've just been astonished with, for instance, book launches and bestseller lists and all that stuff. I have specced out exactly, more than anywhere else on the web that I have seen in any language, how the bestseller lists work, how to write a bestseller, how to launch a bestseller, step by step, what to do. You can look at posts like, I think it's 12 lessons learned marketing the 4-Hour Body, and there are probably a dozen posts of that detail on my blog.
I've read them all, yeah.
And people do not. They'll launch a book and they won't do any of it. It's just like, it blows my mind. And then they'll call me, a week before the launch. They'll be like, "Hey, can you help me launch the book?" And I'm like, "Dude, you are $1 short and a day late."
Well, let's talk about that. Why is that the case?
People. So this is going to sound funny coming from me, perhaps, but there is an erroneous belief that my focus is on shirking responsibility or avoiding work. That's not at all. And if what I'm about, and if you read the 4-Hour Workweek, I think this is clear that I'm about maximizing per hour output and deconstructing problems to find non-obvious solutions. Okay, so let's just say that you do all of that. What you now have is a selection of targets that are very high impact where you can allocate your time, right? Mm-hmm. But even if you provide that recipe, that prescription, like 1 to 10, here's how you can become fluent in Spanish in 8 weeks. You've told me for the last year that that's what you want to do, that is a dream of yours. But I think that people are either, one, not willing to put in the effort to something that has proven to work, or number two, and I think this could be a big piece of it, they're so afraid of failing even if they do it. If I fail following this recipe that works, I will lose self-respect. I will look bad. I will lose hope, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. People just don't do it. And this was borne out in one of the examples I put in the 4-Hour Workweek, which was I would go to this Princeton class twice a year, high-tech entrepreneurship. These are high-level kids, right? I mean, we've got undergrads and graduates in electrical engineering and operations research finance at Princeton. These are smart people. And I would offer a round trip anywhere in the world to people who would contact impossible to reach people and get them to respond in a meaningful way. And what was so astonishing is that because everyone in the class overestimated what the other students would do, they didn't even try. And they would raise their hands, and I'd have like 15 students who'd say, "Oh my God, I'm definitely going to do it, totally going to do it." And then either 0 of them would do it, or 1 or 2 would do it. And their results would actually be pretty lukewarm, mediocre, but because no one else tried, they won. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that is life. I mean, that is life in a nutshell. So in any case, I could go on and on, but suffice to say that what that whole rant started with is I'm going to be doing a post-game analysis of the podcasting experiments and what worked and what didn't.
Sweet. Well, I'll make sure to update the show notes for this podcast whenever those results that we just talked about for those experiments come about. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Moving on. Productivity is huge. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. Certain people seem to just do way more than others. And we've talked about productivity a little bit in the last episode, in episode 51. It's been a year and a half. What are some things that are working for you right now? Beyond working with a team, I mean, you're special. You're Tim Ferriss. You have a team working with you, but a lot of people don't. How can people become more productive today?
Well, there are a number of things that they can do. And I would also say, having spoken with you, yeah, your team's actually bigger than my team right now. I have 1 executive assistant, and that is it. I have a 2-person team. So the way I get away with that is by focusing first and foremost on what I consider timeless principles of being effective. Okay, so you have productivity, which is a combination of, in my mind, being effective, choosing the right things to do and being efficient, doing those things well. If you screw up the first part, doing things quickly just makes matters worse. So that, I think it's Peter Drucker, who's one of my favorite authors on this type of thing, who once said, and it could have been Warren Buffett, also a great thinker when it comes to productivity, that that which is not worth doing is not worth doing well. Right. which makes sense. But if you were to do an autopsy on, it sounds rather morbid, if you were to do an audit on how you spent yesterday, and you meaning the audience listening to this, or how I spent yesterday, it applies to everybody, you will find that the vast majority of time for most people is spent on doing things quickly that are absolutely unimportant, or at the very best, non-critical. Right? So the first thing I would say is picking up a book that seems outdated, like The Effective Executive. And you could certainly read a number of the chapters in the 4-Hour Workweek that consolidate a lot of this. But The Effective Executive is all about being effective. Number one, first and foremost. Once you have identified the one or two force multipliers on your to-do list, I think a second very crucial step is having a ritual for the first hour of your day. What is the launch sequence for each morning that makes you calmly effective? And that is something you have to script for yourself. For me, it entails waking up before I check email or my messages or anything like that. I have athletic greens plus L-glutamine. I could get into the recipe, but I have that on an empty stomach with ice water. I sit down. I do transcendental meditation for 20 minutes in the same spot. I then get up and I brew, I should say, heat hot water for a combination of pu'er and green tea, which I'm drinking right now as we speak. I take 1 or 2 supplements. Then after I've worked on an empty stomach, and this differs from the slow carb diet mandate, typically where I recommend 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up. But I'm doing some experiments right now. And I very often do that. But right now, my launch sequence is having this tea, sitting down, journaling for my day, sort of specking out the blueprint for the rest of the day after that hour. My day will be basically, I will be extremely happy with my day if I do this one thing. And what is that one thing? You have to decide before you get in front of the computer and go into a purely reactive bullet dodging mode. And you block out time to focus on that without other inputs. That's it. If you do that, you'll be ahead of 99% of the people in the world. Now, there are other tactical tools. Yes, people tend to love to focus on email, so I'll give a couple of recommendations related to email. But email is like masturbation. I mean, it really is. It's just, it's just like this. It's a simulation of something that actually is not the real thing. It mimics forward motion when it's just a bunch of frickin' jerking off. I mean, it really, for the most part, is that. And so I tend to not lead with recommendations about email. But if you're going to work on email, then there are a few things you can consider. One is if you're operating out of Gmail or some other programs, use an extension called Boomerang. This allows you to automatically have emails kicked back up to the top of your inbox if someone does not respond, so you don't have to keep track of that type of thing. You can also schedule emails to be sent later, which I do constantly, particularly if I'm declining someone. I will schedule an email to be sent later, so it gives me 48 hours, 72 hours of breathing room if they determine that being persistent is a good idea, which it actually very seldom is with me. I do not reward persistence if I have thought about something and given it a clear no. That's Boomerang. The second, which is actually produced by the same company, is something called Email Game, emailga.me, which allows you to process your email linearly. And this is very interesting for a number of reasons. The punchline is it helps me process my email in probably 50% of the time it would normally take if I were to do it the conventional way. And this is because you're not returning to the inbox and bouncing around up and down, choosing things, marking them as unread, starring them, blah, blah, blah. You're forced on a timed clock to go through your email sequentially. And it is very, very helpful, worth experimenting with. The last recommendation that I would make is process your email offline to reduce anxiety. And I do think that anxiety and fear are the opposite. They are the antithesis of creativity. It's very hard to come up with creative solutions or think outside the box and outgrow your own problems if you're constantly anxious. So reducing that is very important. Meditation is one tool. Processing email offline is another tool, because if you're processing email online, what happens? You send off one email and then you get 2 in response. You send off another email and then you get 4 in response, and you freak out because you feel like you're digging a hole while someone else is filling it in at twice the speed. It's extremely nerve-wracking. So I will use Gmail offline or other email clients. And I just use Gmail offline in Chrome to download email, and then I will, for instance, go to have tea or coffee or even have dinner in some places where I'm not going to annoy other people. And I'll sit down and I'll just sip a glass of wine and jam through 50, 100, 150 email in offline, and then send them all at the same time once I'm done doing that.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I mean, email's been a huge pain for me, and I just recently hired somebody to help me through it, and we've got a great system going. And part of the big thing that she told me was, she didn't say this quote, but I remember hearing this quote somewhere, and it sums it up nicely. It's like, remember, the inbox is nothing but a convenient organizing system for other people's agendas.
Yep.
And it's so true, because it's just, how is that actually helping us get to completing our mission? Or like you said, what we would be happy with if we accomplished that today. And I think it just makes people feel like they're doing work. And that's what I was doing. I was feeling like I was getting things done by answering emails and taking a lot of the recommendations to answer emails, batch processing them, and using these tools and stuff. But I've made some priority shifts, and email is still there. It's obviously important, but it's not at the top of the list, and it's not definitely the first thing I don't check in the morning. I only check twice a day now.
Yeah, it's a good policy, and I would say 2 things. Number one, so that quote, I think might even some variant of it, and I'm sure many people have said it, is in the 4-Hour Workweek. So the son-in-law of a billionaire was on a ski lift with his father-in-law. His father-in-law said, "Wow, I'm so glad that you make me look so good." And his son-in-law was checking his email on his BlackBerry on the chairlift. And he goes, "Yeah, why is that?" And he goes, "Because you check email all the time. You check it every 5 minutes. You make my habits look fantastic." And he said, "Just remember, email is everyone else's agenda for your time." And it's true. It's worth remembering, number one. Number two, I would also just add, the only way to get to inbox 0 without making it your full-time job, so you can't actually do whatever work you're trying to do, the only way to get to inbox 0 reliably is to respond to fewer email. That's it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
All right, to finish up here, Tim, this has been a great conversation, and I feel like we could just talk for hours, but I definitely want to respect your time. The last question I want to ask you is sort of a generic question that a lot of people ask other people who are on people's shows, and I think people are very interested to hear what your answer is and sort of how you would approach this. And this is, of course, if you had to start over again today without any of the context that you have, maybe a little bit of money in the bank, if you wanted to start a business today, what would you do?
Okay, so this will hopefully be a satisfying answer, but it may not be. What I would say is business is extremely wide as a category. And there are businesses that you can use to avoid contact with your significant other. There are businesses that you can use to go seek venture capital to try to swing for the fences in a binary way and have a huge exit of some type with an acquisition or an IPO, for instance. There are businesses that you can build to supplement your full-time income, doing something else, where it's just intended to add a little bit of buffer while you work in a job that you actually love, for instance. And there are cases like this. I mean, there are people in the clergy. There are people who are teachers, for instance, who build muses for this purpose. There are people who create businesses to supplant or replace their job because they want to leave their job. And the reason I make this list and give these examples is because what you design and the decisions you make is entirely dependent on what your goal is, or goals. And this is why dreamlining is so important. And I'm going to give you an answer specific to my goals, but you need to define what is it you want to have, what is it you want to do, who is it you want to be on some level, although the first two help quite a bit, say in the 12 and 24 month range, and then price that out and determine what your target monthly income is. That is the only way I have found to repeatedly and reliably design businesses so that they result in this ideal lifestyle.
And I think it's important to, I just want to reiterate that, because a lot of people just want to create a business and then they start and then they don't know where they're going, and it turns into something that they didn't, that is different than what they had assumed it would be. That's why the whole, understanding, you sort of reverse engineering, what do you want life to be like, and then what kind of business would you need to make that life. It's Jeremy and Jason from Internet Business Mastery call it, what's your single motivating purpose?
Right.
That's key.
It's huge. And you don't, by the way, you don't have to, it's not a permanent decision. So you just need a destination in mind. And I think that many people who fail in business fail in their various forms of business because they want to start a business in the same way they want to learn how to fly a plane, and then they get up in the air, they've learned how to fly, and they have no idea where to land the plane. And they have no idea where they're going, and they're watching their fuel tank tick down. And that is precisely where I think the vast majority, 80% plus that I've met of small business owners end up, because they did not start with at least a tentative plan with a target monthly income and so on.
Right.
For me personally, we would have to identify a period in time. So in 2005, 2004, when I was completely redesigning Brain Quicken and Body Quick, which was my sports nutrition company at the time, to either extricate myself or to shut it down, I had very specific goals, which were to maintain that revenue or have it drop no more than, say, 20%, while I extricated myself and got to the point where it was 2 hours or fewer per week, say, in management time for all aspects of the business. And at this point in time, if I were, say, advising someone who had very similar personality traits, very similar predilections, strengths and weaknesses, who was a recent graduate from college, and by the way, I do that all the time because I work with a lot of young entrepreneurs. My advice would be to focus on your strengths instead of fixing all of your weaknesses. And that is assuming they've gone through the dreamlining process, right? So the answer I'm not going to give is I would create an info product on creating apps and how to focus on geolocating. No. The advice I'm not going to give is you should create, Airbnb for dyslexic chihuahuas, because that's the next big opportunity. The advice I would give is do the hard thinking now of the dreamlining, so you don't need to do incredibly hard work later, like Sisyphus pushing a boulder up a hill that just rolls down every few months. And then I would say, to choose the channels for customer acquisition and customer communication. I don't really like the word engagement very much, because I think it's used in too many ways, so it's lost a lot of its meaning. But the reason I say that is I'm approached by many people who are, say, fantastic on television, who ask me if they should start a blog because they see that my blog has been this sort of nexus, this heartbeat of influence for me and communication for me. And my answer is no, you shouldn't blog, because that's not your strength. You don't like writing. If you have somebody ghost write it and it's just this generic, run of the mill content farm, you're not going to go anywhere. So focus on your strengths. If it's TV, do TV. If it's video, focus on video. If it's short form, go to YouTube. If it's 6 seconds, go to Vine. If it's photographs, go to Instagram, right? If it's fill in the blank, go to Facebook, Twitter. Choose your primary network, number one. And then everything else leads back to that nexus, that center. So for me, I made a very deliberate choice that the blog, and I'm still a very firm believer in WordPress. I think and granted, at this point in time, I'm an advisor to Automatic, which makes WordPress.com. So, take that with a grain of salt. But that's because I've used WordPress since the very beginning. Since my very first day of blogging, I've used WordPress, and it is extremely good for SEO out of the box. But I chose blogging. The blog is my sort of home address, if you will. Everything else I do is a satellite office. And whether that's Twitter, which has a different purpose, right? A semi-different purpose, or any of these other networks that I use, the goal is to ultimately drive people back to the headquarters, back to home base, which is the blog. So it's a very long answer. I think that it is. I would just say this: if you are doing anything with digital products, physical products, even retail, it has never been easier to start a company. The tools out there are so good. And there are so many options, right? This can be a problem though, like we talked about. Yeah. You have things like Celery for doing pre-orders on Kickstarter. You have so many options available. The challenge at this point in time, I think, is not in starting a business. It's in getting attention for your business, because as a result of it never having been easier, you have more noise and more static online than ever before. So you need to be very good at determining what your strengths are, what your message is, who your 1,000 true fans are, and how you're going to go after them. Read Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans. If you're going to read only one article on marketing for the rest of your life, that's the one.
I agree.
And you need to be very, very laser focused, which is, again, why, coming back to the beginning of the conversation, being effective is what counts. Being efficient is so far in second place as to almost not even be a consideration. If you do a handful of things right, even if you're slow and plodding and lethargic about it, you will beat almost everyone. I mean, it's really amazing. For those people who can get into dense stuff, pick up the annual letters of Warren Buffett to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders. That is going to be worth more to you than any MBA program on the planet, I think. So those would be a couple of my observations in response to a very short question. So sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, I appreciate it. A lot of gold nuggets in there. And Tim, thank you so much for coming back on the show. We will appreciate it so much. And we look forward to checking out your podcast, seeing how far it goes, and also seeing the results of all those experiments too.
No, I appreciate that. Tim Ferriss Show, guys. Check it out. Give me some feedback. I'm always up for improvement, and there's some pretty cool cats who are on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. We appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
Bye. All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Tim Ferriss. Again, check him out, his new podcast, Tim Ferriss Podcast. Just put Tim Ferriss in iTunes, and you'll check it out. And also, it's probably going to be right up there near the top. So thank you. If you want the show notes for this episode, head on over to smartpassiveincome.com/session110. And for all of you out there who listen to the podcast, I got a special treat for you. Coming later, by the end of this month, actually, this is May 2014, you're going to see a brand new iPhone application that's going to help you consume this podcast, the Ask Pat podcast, and also blog content in a really easy, convenient manner. I do have an app already, but this one is the 2.0 version. It's just so much better. The user experience is much better, and I think you'll like it. And again, of course, it's going to be free. So look out for it on the blog very soon. Just head on over to smartpassiveincome.com, and by the end of the month, it'll be ready for you. Hopefully, if Apple approves it, and I don't see why they wouldn't. Anyway, thank you again showing us for this episode. smartpassiveincome.com/session110. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace. Look, I get it. You want to grow your business, but trying to sell to hundreds or even thousands of people gets very exhausting very fast. But what if you could sell at scale with a simple, powerful quiz? ScoreApp helps you sell to more people without adding more to your plate. You build a quiz or assessment that your audience actually wants to take. Then they answer a few quick questions and get a personalized result right away. It shows them where they're at and what they need to do next and how you can help. And you build huge amounts of trust before you make even a single offer. No hard sell, no chasing leads, just value at scale. Get 50% off the first 3 months using the discount code SPI. All you have to do is just head to scoreapp.com/SPI. Again, that's scoreapp.com/SPI. Have you dreamt about being your own boss, but still haven't made the first steps to making that dream a reality? Well, I get that. Starting a business can feel super overwhelming with legal forms, paperwork, finances. It's a lot. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about Taylor Brands. Taylor is a complete business builder designed to make launching your business simple and stress-free. You can register your LLC in just minutes, keeping your personal assets and the business assets separate from day one. From there, you get access to everything you need to get off the ground. Legal documents, licenses and permits, invoicing and bookkeeping tools, and even a 100-day business coaching program, all designed to help you hit the ground running. You'll also get a free, personalized business plan, branding tools, and so much more. And of course, listeners of this show get an exclusive 35% discount to get started. All you have to do is head to taylorbrands.com/SPI. That's TAILORBRANDS.com/SPI. Stop dreaming, start building with Taylor Brands.